Hi, I wanted to talk to you today about why Scripture matters in our life in the 21st century. There's one passage of Scripture that is constantly causing issues for people, and it is Genesis chapter 1. It's the chapter where God creates. And when you look at this passage, what you have is God creating day and night. He creates the sky. He creates dry ground and plants, and then he goes on to create the stars, the moon, and the skies, creatures of the sea, creatures of the air, and finally land creatures and humans. Now this bothers a lot of people because the passage in Scripture doesn't really get into how God did it. And people usually think that what matters in this chapter is the how. For people who believe in a 6-day creation, you have problems. It has an ease because you can look at every single section in Genesis chapter 1 and 2 and say, hey, this is pretty easy to follow. It's straightforward. It's true, but the problems that exist are things like, how did the dinosaurs play into this situation? How does it occur that there are creatures that are extinct for millions of years way before humans come about, but yet we are created on the same day if you read that day as a 24-hour period? For evolutionists, this makes more sense because you have a passage of Scripture that shows a development, that shows a growth, and yet, of course, you also run into the issue of where's the missing link. And what people think about Genesis 1, they think that what matters is how God created, whether it's evolution or whether it's a 6-day period. But that's not really why this passage matters. I want to go into 3 reasons why this passage matters beyond that debate. The first thing is I want to bring out to you that God creates something good out of nothing. Hebrews 11:3 is one of the passages that support the Christian belief that not only is God the original creator, God creates out of nothing. You see, the only thing that we do in terms of creation is we take something that someone else has done and we build upon it. We're never truly the creators. You know, even if you build the tallest skyscraper in the world, you're using metals that God made. You're just using them in a different way. So we are not truly the creators of anything. And it's interesting that when you look at this passage, it shows you not only does God create out of nothing, but it also shows you that God creates good. All the things that God creates in Genesis chapter 1 are listed as good, except for humans. And humans are listed as very good. You see, God doesn't create bad things. Bad things come about because Satan or people take the good that God has done and twist it into something bad. The second thing that you can really see about God in this passage is that God is a God of order. 1 Corinthians 14:33 says that God is not a God of confusion, but of peace. God created this world and he chose to create the world in order. And even when you're looking out throughout the entire Old Testament and the New Testament, God's church always has a hierarchy to it. He always has order. God is not a God who likes chaos, who likes disorder, who likes dysfunction. God creates an orderly fashion, and he calls us to live our lives in an orderly fashion. When you think about most of the stress in your life, it usually happens not because you're going with a stable routine, but because dysfunction is breaking into a peaceful routine. So you need to ask yourselves, are you seeking an orderly life or are you drowning in chaos? And the third thing that we see in this is that God is a planner. According to 1 Peter 1:20, before the foundation of the world was even set, God had already determined to send his Son to be an intercessor for us, to make amends for us, to be the one who offers himself up to be the redemption of mankind. God created this world in a way that everything that we needed, the resources, the oxygen, the water, whatever else mankind needed to survive would be there before we got there. He planned. And God invites us to be part of his plan to follow him, to walk in his path. It's God's path that leads to order. And if you think about Psalms 23, what you end up with is God's path leads us beside still waters and restores our soul. It's not the chaotic nature of just trying to do things our way. It's when we follow God's path. Genesis 1 tells us that God is a creator. It doesn't really tell us how he created. But however God created, he's still the same God now that he was then, and it still matters. God bless.